Chapter 8, Cowboy. Omri gaped at Patrick. He hadn't thought of this, but of course now that he did, it was obvious. No boy who knew the secret could possibly rest until he had a little live person of his own. Patrick, it's not like you think, just something to play with. Of course not. You've explained it all. Now just let me put But you have to think about it first. No, no, stop. You can't yet. And anyway, I don't agree with you using one of mine. Omri didn't know why he was so reluctant. It wasn't that he was mean. He just knew somehow that something awful would happen if he let Patrick have his own way. But it wasn't easy to stop him. Omri had grabbed him, but he wrenched free. I've got to, he panted. I've got to. He stretched out his hand toward the pile of soldiers again. Omri and Patrick struggled. Patrick seemed to have gone a bit crazy. Suddenly, Omri felt the rim of the tin plate under his shifting feet. Now think about what was on the tin plate. He shoved Patrick out of the way, and they both stared downward. That's a great adverb. The plate had tipped over. The fire had slipped onto the carpet. Little Bear, with a yell, had leapt clear and was now waving his arms and shouting awful things at him. His roasted meat had disappeared under Omri's foot, which instinctively he stamped down on to put out the fire. He felt a squishy feeling under his shoe. Now look, we've spoiled the meat, he screamed at Patrick. If all you can do is fight, I wish I'd never brought you here. Patrick looked mullish. It was your fault. You should have let me put something in the cupboard. Omri lifted his shoe. Underneath was a nasty mess of burned stuff, squashed meat, and a bent erector set. Little Bear let out a wail. You no great spirit, you stupid boy. Fight, spoil good meat. You feel shame. Maybe we can rescue it. He crouched down and disentangled the meat from the mess, burning his fingers. He tried to brush it clean, but it was no use. It was all mixed up with the smelly stuff of the firelighter and stuck with bits of carpet hairs. Terribly sorry, Little Bear, he mumbled. No good sorry. Little Bear hungry. Work all day. Cook meat. Now, what eat? I chop you down like tree. And to Omri's horror, he saw Little Bear run to where that battle axe was lying. He picked it up and he advanced towards Omri's leg, swinging it in great circles as he came. Patrick fairly danced with excitement. Isn't he fantastically brave? Much more than David and Goliath. Omri felt the whole thing was going way too far. He removed his leg from harm's way. Little Bear, calm down, he said. I said I'm sorry. Little Bear looked at him, blazing-eyed. Then he rushed over to the chair Omri used at his table, and he began chopping wedges out of the leg. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it, Little Bear, or I'll put you back in that cupboard. Little Bear stopped abruptly, and he dropped his axe. He stood with his back to them, his shoulders heaving. I'll get you something to eat right now, something delicious. Go and paint. I'll make you feel better. I won't be long. To Patrick, he said, hang on. I can smell supper cooking. I'll go get a bit of whatever we're having. And he rushed downstairs without stopping to think. Patrick, Little Bear, in a room without Omri. His mother was dishing up a nice hot bowl of stew. Can I have a tiny bit of that, Mom? Just a little bit in a spoon? It's for a game we're playing. His mother obligingly gave him a big spoonful, probably milliliters. Don't let it drip, she said. Does Patrick want to stay for supper? I don't know. I'll ask, said Omri. Were you two fighting up there? I heard thumps. No, not really. It was just that he wanted to do something that Omri, stopped dead, as if he was frozen to the ground. He might have been frozen. His face went so cold. Patrick was up there with the cupboard and 2 biscuit tins full of little plastic figures, alone. Omri ran. He usually won the egg and spoon race at school, which was just as well. It's hard enough to carry an egg and a spoon while running along a flat field. It's a great deal harder to carry a tablespoonful of boiling hot stew while you rush up a flight of stairs. If most of it was still there when he got to the top, it was more by good luck than skill, because he was hardly looking at the spoon at all. All he could think about was what might be, no, must be happening in his room, and how much more of it would happen if he did not hurry. He burst through the door, and he saw exactly what he dreaded. Patrick was bent over the cupboard, just turning the key to open it. What? Omri said, but he had no need to go on. Patrick, without turning around, opened the cupboard and reached inside. Then he did turn. He was gazing into his cupped hands with eyes like huge marbles. He slowly extended his hands towards Omri and whispered, "Look." Omri, stepping forward, had just time to feel intensely glad that at least Patrick did not put a whole handful of figures in, but had only changed one. But which one? He leaned over, and then he drew back with a gasp. It was the cowboy and his horse. The horse was in an absolute panic. It was scrambling wildly in the cup of Patrick's hands, snorting and pawing, and up one minute and down on its side the next. His stirrups and reins were flying. It was such a beautiful horse. It was snow white with a long mane and a long tail, and the sight of it acting so frightened gave Omri heart pains. As for the cowboy, he was too busy dodging the horse's flying feet and jumping out of the way when it fell to notice much about his surroundings. He probably thought he was caught in an earthquake. Omri and Patrick watched, spellbound, as the little man in his plaid shirt, buckskin trousers, high-heeled leather boots, and big hat scrambled up the side of Patrick's right hand, dodging through the space between his index finger and his thumb. And he swung himself clear of the horse, only to look down and find that he was dangling over empty space. His hat came off and fell, slowly like a leaf, down, down, down to the floor, so infinitely far below. The cowboy gave a yell, and he scrabbled with his feet against the back of Patrick's hands, hanging on for dear life to the ridge right beside his thumbnail. "Hold your hands still," Omri said, who in his excitement was jerking them nervously. There was a moment of stillness. The horse stood up, trembling all over, prancing with terror. Beside his hooves was some tiny black thing. Omri peered closer, and he saw it was a pistol. The cowboy had now recovered. He scrambled back through the finger gap and said something to the horse that sounded like, "Whoa back, steady fella." Then he slid down and he grabbed the reins, holding them just below the horse's nose. He patted his face. That seemed to calm it down. Then looking around swiftly, but not noticing the enormous faces above him, he reached cautiously down and he picked up the pistol from between the horse's hooves. "Whoa there! Stand!" Omri watched like a person hypnotized. He wanted to cry out to Patrick that it was a real gun, but somehow he couldn't. He could only think that the sound of his voice would throw the horse once more into a panic, and that either horse or man would get hurt. Instead, he watched while the cowboy pointed the gun in various directions, warily. Then he lowered it. Still holding the horse's reins, he moved until he could press his hand against Patrick's skin. Then he let his eyes move upward towards the curved fingers just level with the top of his head. "What in the world?" he said. "It sure looks like a great big— oh, what am I talking about? It can't be. Hey, it just ain't possible." But the more he looked, the more certain he must have become that he was indeed inside a pair of cupped hands. And finally, after scratching his gingery head for a minute— that means he has red hair— he ventured to look right up past the fingers. And then, of course, he saw Patrick's big face looking at him. There was a petrified moment when he couldn't move. Then he raised his pistol in a flash. "Patrick, shut your eyes!" Bang! It was only a little bang, but it was a real bang, and a puff of real gun-smelling smoke appeared. Patrick shouted with pain and surprise, and he would have dropped the pair if Omri hadn't put his hand underneath to catch them. Patrick's own hand clapped itself to his cheek. "Ow! Ow! He shot me!" Patrick said. Omri was not much bothered about Patrick at that moment. He was furious with him and very anxious about the little man and his horse. Quickly, he put them down on the bed, saying like the cowboy, "Steady! Whoa! I won't hurt you. It's okay." "Ow!" Patrick said. "It hurts! Ow!" "Serves you right. I warned you," said Omri. Then he felt sorry and said, "Well, let's have a look." Carefully, Patrick took his hand down. A drop of blood was smeared on his cheek, and by peering very close, Omri could see something very like a bee's stinger embedded in his skin. "Hang on, I see it. I'll squeeze it out." "Ow!" A quick squeeze between his thumbnails, an almost invisible speck of black metal, which had only just barely penetrated his skin, popped out. He shot me!" Patrick got out again. "I told you. My Indian stuck a knife in me," said Omri. "I think we ought to put him back. Your cowboy, I mean. Of course, not my Indian." "Put him back where?" Omri explained how the cupboard would change him back into plastic again, but Patrick wasn't having any of that. "Oh, no, I want him. He's terrific. Look at him now." Patrick feasted his eyes admiringly on the little cowboy, who was still ignoring the giants, who he clearly thought he must have imagined, and he was doggedly dragging his horse across Omri's quilt as if he were wading through the dunes of an infinite pale blue desert. Omri reached for him, but Patrick stepped into his path. Ooh, isn't that one of our vocabulary words? "Don't you touch him. I bought him. I changed him. He's mine." "You bought him for me." "You said you didn't want him." "Well, the cupboard's mine, and I told you not to use it. And so what if I did? Anyway, it's done. He's alive now, and I'm keeping him. I'll bash you if you try to take him. Wouldn't you bash me if I took your Indian?" Omri was silent. That reminded him. Where was Little Bear? He looked around. He soon spotted him at the other side of the room, busy with his paints. Some beautiful designs showing turtles, herons, and beavers, mainly in red and yellow, had appeared on the side of the teepee Omri had made. As Omri crouched beside him to admire them, Little Bear, without looking, said, "You bring food? I very soon die, if not eat." And this is a long chapter and a lot has happened. So I'm going to stop right there. But I want you to think about what Patrick did when Omri went downstairs to get stew. I want you to think about who he brought to life and what happened that was very dangerous. And I want you to notice that Little Bear seems to not even realize what has happened. So we'll finish chapter 8 tomorrow, and we'll find out how Little Bear reacts to Patrick's cowboy. Have a good night.